Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Influence podcast. Thank you for being with us. And today we have a guest in our podcast, Scott Withoff. And I had the honor to know Scott for a couple years now. And he's a business owner. Also, he's a life and business coach consultant. And of course, he's married, and of course, he lives in Hanover because Hanover is the best town. Also, they do have amazing 4 boys, right?
Yes, very good. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
So we had the honor, and we've been blessed to have Scott and Shelley. Took our staff, actually, Influence Church staff, through a few months of really kind of coaching. That was a blessing because I did not realize that actually people are different. They are not all made the same. And then for me to interact with other people on staff was kind of mind-blowing. So we do appreciate that. So today we are going to talk a little about growing. And in today's culture, we have this shift, if you want to call it, December, January. In December, almost everybody, especially in America, it's thinking more about giving, about helping others. It's focused on family. It's focused on others than ourselves. But then as we transition after New Year's Eve, a lot of people start thinking like, okay, I need to develop new habits, I have to develop new disciplines, and they start thinking a little more about themselves. So today's podcast, it's, December, and I was thinking to talk a little about growing. And of course, I'm a pastor, so I have to throw in some Bible verses. And the Bible verse that I was thinking, it's found in Luke 2, chapter 2, verse 52. And it's saying, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man.
Yeah, very good. I think there's definitely a shift that happens in our mindset at the beginning of the year. So I think the timing of this is really well, where we think of new year, new opportunities. Where do I need to change? Where do I need to really grow? So excited to kind of dig in today and just really what can we learn together in how Jesus modeled his own life to us.
I do think this verse highlight a significant aspect of Jesus' early life. In Jesus' life, we don't have too much. We have the birth, we found him around 12 years old in the temple, and not too much until he started his ministry in 30s, right? Or late 20s. But it shows through this Bible verse, though divine, he grew up as a human being. In every way, experiencing growth in knowledge, in physical development, relationship with God, and also relationship with others. So, but question is, because we don't have a lot of experience or a lot of history about Jesus during his growth, a question that comes in my mind is, how did Jesus grew in those areas?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We can take even this one verse, and there's so many other verses that we can look at that we're going to look at just to say, what can we observe about his life, of what he had actually done, that he modeled for us that applies today. So absolutely, I think there's 4 areas just in that one verse that we can just explore.
Yeah, so
what does that look like?
Right, so let's start with the first part, is saying Jesus grew in wisdom, right? What that means.
Yeah, when you think about wisdom, I mean, there's knowledge out there, but I think it's how do I take that knowledge into wisdom itself? So there's a level of intentionality of what Jesus had done there, of how do I expand that level of knowledge that I've got, and how did he actually do that?
I remember somebody once said, wisdom, it's knowledge well applied. So which I'm thinking like, is not like wisdom, it's download on us just instantly. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's growing, right? Wisdom grows if we are intentional in growing. Many of us think about Jesus, well, he is the Son of God. When he came on earth, I'm sure he came with some wisdom from above. But I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
in my opinion, Jesus set aside everything that he had in heaven, and he came and he became flesh just like us. So wisdom, it's growing in understanding and insight, which actually emphasize the intellectual growth of Jesus, even though he was divine. It shows us actually the willingness to learn and develop wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that level of willingness that comes into it, but it's then how do I take not just that insight, how do I take action to that level of insight? Because that's where things change, is when we just not just know, but then we actually do something about it. Absolutely.
I'm just going to throw a couple Bible verses because, as I said, many people think that, Jesus was the Son of God and he had other qualities that not every human being had. But a lot of people even wonder if he was any different if we read through the Bible. In Matthew chapter 13, he's saying people that around them, they're like, isn't this a carpenter's son, or is not his mother Mary around us? So not a lot of people believed him that he was the Son of God as he grew up, which that means he was just a normal boy.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so fascinating, it's so curious inside of, he was this young child and that grew up, and that's where it's like, how can we actually exemplify and really learn from his growing up itself? Absolutely.
And in book of John, it's illustrated that actually not even his brothers and flesh brothers believed in him like a son of God. So that means he had no spatial anything.
Yeah, which I think we can definitely relate. I mean, have you always had people believing in you inside of that? I mean, there's so many parallels into his life in how he grew up that which we can relate to today of how he went at it.
I really like this story because I've been thinking, like, how did Jesus grew in wisdom? And at age 12, we do find him, actually, I like this story just because it's showing us that he was a really active boy because his parents lost him, right? They were traveling back from the temple, and Mary and Joseph, couple days in the trip, they realized, oh, where is Jesus? And then they went back to Jerusalem and they found Jesus in the temple.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some things there to observe, is that he actually stayed behind. And you start thinking about, what did he do? He was just curious. He started actually just learning from some of the teachers that was out there. So as I think about into our own life, just this level of willingness to be open, to stay curious. Years ago, a mentor had once told me there's a time to be a student and there's a time to be a teacher. It's like this two-sided coin. And I see how that is really just a lifestyle. It doesn't matter what our age is, there's times where we can just be a student. And that's exactly what he was doing. He was just being a student, because there was a time, certainly he was a teacher, that he had modeled that towards us. So I think some of those qualities of just how do you actually grow in wisdom, he showed that to us just in that particular situation itself.
Yeah, and the Bible says that they found him in the temple where he was listening and asking questions, which I think that's how we learn. Being curious, and sometimes people think that you should not ask questions about God, you should not ask questions about the Bible, you should just take it as it is. But Jesus show us that it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah, and I think what comes with some of that asking questions is sometimes, if you ever had, is we're called to get a little bit out of our own comfort zone. And sometimes it's easy to, well, let's just go whatever my parents do. And inside of this, it was a level where, he took a level of, hey, I just want to, you look at his heart of desire for learning, it was off the charts in some regards, because you start thinking about, it's like, okay, am I really someone that has that level of curiosity? How open truly, if I ask myself, how truly open am I to willing to learn itself? Yeah.
And you have a good point, because during the first century, we are not talking about public school. We are not talking about teacher. We are not talking about a paid position. Most of the learning was done by family, by being intentional, individual being intentional in learning.
Yeah, because you think about it, he didn't need to do it, but he actually intentionally chose to do that as a way to what? Grow in his wisdom. And I think there's not a certain age by any means. I think that was one thing in my own life of thinking, well, maybe I got to be an adult before this can happen. That you can start this as a young child to continually desire and just remain curious of what can I actually learn into this here capacity. Yeah.
And I really like what you just said about applying. Like you learn and you practice. You learn and you practice. You learn and you practice. That's how you gain more and more wisdom.
Yeah, and I think there's a time then where I go back into this two-sided coin. There's going to be a time in which, as you're taking that wisdom, to teach that. It's one thing just to take all that wisdom in, but I think there's a whole nother level then for us as we get older in our years of wisdom to be able to freely give that away to those around us, because God truly does use that for such good.
That's a good point. I will even go so far to even say, and probably I'll get in trouble with my wife, but knowledge without applying it, I think it's lack of wisdom.
Yeah.
So knowledge is not necessarily wisdom.
Yeah.
Knowledge applied, I think it's wisdom.
Yeah,
well,
good.
we could talk about this for a long, long time, but we do have another 3 areas that we need to cover, right? So the next one I want to just highlight was the second part in that verse. He's saying Jesus grew in stature. And when I thought about that, does that mean just height or something more than that?
Yeah, it seems like it's way more than that, doesn't it? Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about Jesus grew in stature, I'm thinking about health, right? Like it's not just about height. And to be honest with you, around Christmas, I do grow in stature, but it's not height, it's width. And you know, all those cookies and all those good food, and it's catching up to me. I was talking with Kelly, bought me a couple of sweaters, and I try one of those, and then I'm looking in the mirror and like, wow, they don't make sweater without bellies anymore after age 50. All of them comes with bellies. But all that good food and cookies, it's helping us grow. But I don't think that's the growth we are talking about.
No, not at all. Not for this level of contents. I think there's definitely a level of holistic of when you start to look at it and you pull it back some. It's how did he actually grow mentally? How did he actually grow physically? Certainly from that aspect, but how did he grow spiritually? I mean, there's a whole component itself that I think we can learn from this here passage.
Sometimes I wonder, do you think Jesus went to the gym?
Well, you think about what was a gym? It wasn't certainly modern day gyms like we have today.
Right?
Yeah.
But think about it. We find Jesus through the whole ministry walking and walking and walking, climbing mountains, going for prayer. And I don't think you need extra gyms if you walk so much.
Yeah, you think about from that level of just how fit he was for greater purpose. And just when you start thinking about that ourselves of like, where's the area in which I need to start growing in that capacity so that when given the opportunity, hey, that we're ready for it. Yeah.
That's a good point, because I don't think Jesus waited until he started 30 to start walking around and be ready. When he started his ministry, he was equipped and ready. So that means he grew in strength and developed his body before that.
Yeah, I think there's a level of anticipation that comes with it of saying, it's what can I do now in preparation for what is to come? In knowing that there's something greater in which for all of us that he's preparing us for. But rather than sitting and waiting for it, we're actually intentional once again in stepping into that area of how can I actually grow into my capacity mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually itself. Yeah.
I tell people, we are a portable church, right? So Sunday morning for us, it's pushing the carts out of the trailer or loading the trailer after. But not many people knows actually Friday or Saturday evening, I do specific stretches to be sure I don't have any pain when I push those cards in the morning. So I'm intentional thinking Saturday about what I'm gonna do Sunday, that my body has to be well equipped or stretched to be sure I don't hurt.
Yeah, I think there's a component, I love that, in knowing, even prior to that, and as I think about this right now, there's a component of rest that came into it too. You think about, Jesus had times of rest himself to be ready. And I think that's, in the culture in which where we're at right now, I think that's something that people are kind of pushing off aside. Hey, I'm stronger than this right now. I don't need necessarily that rest. But it's one of those items that can help unlock us, is really taking the adequate time for our own self-care and our own level of rest into where he's going to call us to.
That's really good. And I do think it's a strong link between spiritual health and physical health. In biblical text, actually, if we look Proverbs 17:22, which, by the way, it's the book of wisdom, right? Yeah. It's saying that a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Mm-hmm. So it is a good correlation, a connection between spiritual and physical health. Because let's be honest, when I feel in pain, I don't think I can be so spiritual, because I can get frustrated when I'm in pain. Mm-hmm. Also, Apostle Paul is saying, I think it's in writing to in Book of Corinthians, that it has this example that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. With the Holy Spirit, it's part of God. It's God. So thinking that our body is holding something holy probably should inspire and motivate us to take care of our body.
Yeah, it really asks that deeper question inside of ourselves of how am I really treating myself? Do I really treat it as God views it himself, as in the Word? Yeah.
So Jesus grew in wisdom, Jesus grew in stature, and then the third one, Jesus grew in favor with God, which this sometimes kind of puzzle me, because he's the Son of God, not just the Son of God, he's the only Son of God. He had all the favor with his Father, right? Or he is called my beloved Son, the Bible said. So that means God said about his Son, he is my beloved Son. How much more favor do you want? How much more favor do you need? But the Bible is saying that he grew in favor with God.
Yeah, and I think once again, I think there's a learning in that of what does it actually mean to grow in the favor of God? How does that apply towards our own life? Because it was exactly something that he had done himself.
To be able to grow in a few things that in my opinion, Jesus did that helped him grow in favor with God, in favor with the Father, was that he was obedient. He was pleasing God. In the book of John, he's saying that the one who sent me is with me, for I always do what pleases him. Mm-hmm. So that it was Jesus' attitude, to do everything that he can to please God, which I think that what made him grow in favor with God. Also, something else that God did is just he fulfilled his purpose. So God the Father had a purpose for him. Mm-hmm. And when he came here and fulfilled that purpose, of course that made him grow in favor with God. Yeah. It's like thinking about my kids, right? Because I have some kids and I want them to do a few things around the house or in life. And when they do that, actually they grow in favor with me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a relational component in that, isn't there? And I think about, growing in favor, how do we practically live that out now? You think about what Jesus did is he intentionally set time to be with the Father itself. And it really applies into our own life, because I think there's so many things that we can say yes to. There's so many opportunities that continually are, hey, you want to do this or you want to do that. But you think about the mindset that Christ had and the level of just importance that he put on the necessary essential item of just slowing down, because I think there's a slowing down inside of that, having favor with God, and then being able to really rest and somewhat into the presence. So being able to slow down and just sit at the Father of Lord, what do you have for me today? What do you see? Open my eyes, open my ears to really, what do you see that I'm not seeing right now? I think there's something there that it creates this level of favor that can happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that about slowing down because we do live in this world of, trying to remember who said, but like, we live in a world of hurry sickness. It's like go, 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 go. And without realizing your whole life, it's becoming like that. Go, 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 go.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's almost like we wear this badge, hey, how was your weekend? And the more we can say about all that we jam-packed into it, but then at the end of it, it's like, I'm just exhausted. I need a vacation from the vacation or from the weekend itself. So it's knowing, how can I actually enter into a space of intentional rest? Is just really where my mind goes. He was so intentional in his level of being connected to the Father at all times. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we have one more to cover, but the last one, and not the least, Jesus grew in favor with men. And what do you think that means?
I think there's a level there. He grew his favor with men, and it's around the relational component again, with the people around him that came across his path. Is how did he actually do that? There's a relational side. Yeah.
And I think about when the Bible says he grew in relation with men, with others. It's about he gains their respect, probably. He gains their admiration. Probably when he starts saying something, people were like, wow, start paying attention.
Yeah.
I think all of those. But also I think qualities that he had to be able to grow in relation with others. Probably you should not scream, yell at people, bring people down. So probably he was really uplifting, bringing hope, bringing a message of encouragement.
Yeah, you think about screaming and yelling doesn't seem to bring too much favor, does it? But you start to think about his spirit of just of listening goes back into asking good questions. But I would fully agree. There was a level where he was encouraging. And I think it can happen for us today. There's some of the items that I see is just the power of our words, right? We have a lot of power in the words that we've been given itself, and we can use those words to either build up people or tear them down. So whether we're getting gas at the gas station, just simply a smile and just saying some positive word to them can be a way in which there could be some favor over the course of time. But it's how I see other people. I think that's another area that comes into it. If you see other people for good with positive intent, you're going to want to bring value to them. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think treating people with kindness and respect, also building good reputation, integrity, I think all of those is just helping us to grow in favor with men, in favor with people.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at some of the character of just who Christ was and is today, and exemplifies all of those type of qualities. Absolutely.
An example, yesterday we went to Sam's Club and I had to fill the truck with gas and Kelly was with me. So we go in this line and the person in front of us, it's at the pump and was a long line and they were moving very slow. And like we were talking about, I'm very sick, so let's go. And they're like, what is taking so long? Just fill the... And then this gentleman is putting in the card, is taking it out, but he's taking it out very slow. And I could see it. The pump is not working. So he tried again. And then I could see how he's just taking the car slow. And it's like, don't take the car slow, pull the car fast. But I'm in the truck, right? I didn't tell him anything. And Kelly's looking like, go help him. I'm sure he will figure it out. So I'm staying in the truck, frustrated because he's not moving fast enough. And then I see him putting the car, and again, he's taking the car slow out. I'm like, oh, come on. So then Kelly like, just go and help him. I'm like, okay, you are right. So I got out and I went there and was nothing wrong with his car. He was just taking the car slow out. So I like, just take it out fast. And I put it in, I took it out and worked. So I was just a member's card, right? Yeah. So I went in the truck and then I saw him putting his payment card in. I was like, oh no, take it out quick, please. Take it out quick. And he took it out slow. Like, oh, come on. But the point is, we have to be full of grace towards people and try to help out there.
Yeah, I think it's easy. I mean, I love the story of that real situation. It's easy to sometimes go into that judgment area. What's wrong with that person? And we go into that blame game where it's really, if you can go into that area of just being curious, how can I actually support? How can I fight for that individual of what's happening with this? But that our natural tendency doesn't always go that way, does it?
Nope.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, I don't have this time. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Pull the car quick, keep going.
And it's usually that time when we got another appointment lined up of like, we don't have time for this. Yes, we get tested that way.
So I think showing kindness to people around us, having integrity, respecting people, and just goes the extra mile like Jesus did, will help us to grow in favor with people. And by the way, at the end, he waved at me and he was so thankful. And so I think it's getting pretty late and we could talk about this a lot, but something that I want towards the end of the podcast is how can we challenge people? And how can we not just challenge people, but how can we challenge ourselves in a beginning of the year? Because I'll be honest with you, I put some of those resolution, if you want to call them, over the years, and not all of them I accomplished. I kind of, I try something and I like, this is the year I'm trying. 3, 4, 5 months later, I find myself not even remotely close to accomplish what I want to do.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that speaks into a lot of what I see, and I can so relate it into my own life. There's a lot of items, what I call, we're aspirational. Is we kind of in the moment, so to speak, I want to change this, but we really don't look from a level of intentionality of really going a little bit deeper into saying, okay, who do I really want to become? And which is a deeper question in itself, and I think that's out of today's, just even the passage of Luke 2:52 of like, okay, now what? You look at these 4 items, what does that actually mean for you and me? And for everybody that's there. And what I've learned through this is there's a process sometimes in which you got to go through to be able to really, so it doesn't just move from aspirational, and it can move into an application inside. And as we've talked and we've seen into our own lives, I think sometimes we take on too much. We think we can change the world in a day. And we just, sometimes it's just that 1 degree. It's what's the one thing that God is asking of me that I need to grow in? Because there's lots of different things that we talked about today. But I think that's a key element is starting out with just kind of identifying what is the one thing that I need to do. Yeah.
You took our staff through this strategy or core, right?
Yes.
Can you expand on that a little?
Absolutely. And we call it a core process because why? We actually lead out of our core. So if you're listening to this, you could just take a piece of paper and just put on CORE, because this is an intentional process that builds up our core in our own leadership itself. So what do we mean by that? The C portion is just simply calling it. So as you think about today, you just ask yourself a simple question of, okay, what is really my learning opportunity? Because there's always opportunities out there. You could take, when you're at the gas station, with a moment of reflection there of saying, okay, what is my learning opportunity out of this? Just call it. I think it's important to just identify, here's what the one thing, that's where it starts. And then it moves down into the O, and the O is just simply owning it. I have to own it. I think sometimes it's easy to, well, it's not my responsibility, it's your responsibility, but there is a responsibility that each one of us have.
It's not that the sweater has a belly, it's just, it's my belly, right?
Yes.
So I have to own that.
Yeah, so I can't own that for you in saying, hey, you gotta stop. I can tell you, hey, you need to just stop eating the cookies, but that doesn't really change anything, does it? It only changes when I actually take inside of my own role and responsibility to say, you know what, I have a choice here in which I can do something. I need to own it.
Correct, because also with some temperament, some people, you tell them what to do and they do the opposite.
Yeah.
because it's how they are wired. Like, no, you don't tell me what to do.
Yes, yeah, you're exactly right. And I think the other side that often can play into it is sometimes what do? We own other people's responsibilities. So we're carrying things that we're not really meant to carry. So there's a fine line into really asking myself, you got to go a little bit deeper. What is the one item that I need to own that only I can own? Does that make some sense?
Yeah, what is mine to own and what is not mine to own.
Absolutely. So if I want to be a better husband, as an example, or a better dad, what's the one item that I need to own itself? So that's your call it, your C, and then your O is your own it. And then there's a pivot that needs to happen. It's good to know your C and your O, but then the R moves into, I need to lead myself. It's good for me to know what the one thing is, and it's good for me to own the one item, but nothing really changes until I actually lead myself. And that's where the R comes into place, is how am I going to now intentionally choose to respond? What do I need to do that I need to lead myself different? It could just be I need to think differently. It could just be inside of our own mindset as the one item that's out there. So as I choose to respond it, then it's moving into, it doesn't stop there, then it moves into the E, and that's around the execution portion. I know there's many times in my own life where it's like I called it, I owned it, I responded, but still nothing changed until I executed. I actually took the level of action. I think the E is a valuable component because it needs that level of action. It needs that level of accountability of here's when I'm actually going to do it. So if you use, hey, I'm going to go to the gym, it's, okay, here's when I'm going to the gym, this specific days and at these specific times. So each one of the letters have a level of intentionality that are necessary to really change what the future may look for yourself.
So what I'm hearing is just doing 3 out of 4 won't help you too much.
It may move the needle some, but it's not really going to get you the level of traction of what you really desire that's out there. And I think sometimes, just in working with other individuals and coaches, sometimes what we do is we go from the call it right to execution, and we don't go down to why do I even want this change? How are some different ways to respond? So there's a lot to kind of unpack, but the key is just having a tool to be able to, how do I take these learnings and actually move into an area in which I can grow in myself?
And I really like this strategy, call it, own it, respond, and then execute it, because it's making us slow down, process what we want to accomplish, and then develop a plan to accomplish it.
Yeah.
Because I think all the resolution we make is going to have a much higher chance to be fulfilled if we slow down and develop a plan instead of, I just want to do this.
Yeah, I think that's where I would say you start thinking about some of the greatest learnings that happen. It's counter to our nature. Is oftentimes, I just add more items, and it's actually the level on what are the essential items that are going to be necessary for me. So I think there's learnings inside of that, is really building in space within whether your day or your week to say, okay, here's the moments in which I can have some level of reflection. I think just the timing of the year is just kind of a natural way at the end of the year of just celebrating all the things that God has done, but then to look into the future to say, okay, what's the one area inside of myself, or what's the one area inside of my family that I really want to grow? And oftentimes there's a principle even inside of that. In order to grow, is oftentimes there's a level where you have to let go of something. And you could use a monkey bar illustration. When we were kids, we were going on monkey bars. But to really reach your arm up to the next, oftentimes what you have to do, there's a principle there, you have to let go of something. So that might be something for yourself as you think about it. What do you need to let go of as you move into 25? It could be something it's just not helping you get to where you want to go. So that's really our challenge to you, is really looking at where's the one area in which I want to grow as I move into 25.
Yeah, sometimes you come to a place in our lives where it's only so much on the plate, and you cannot put any more on the plate. So sometimes something has to come up for something else to go on. And I really like that idea that it's not about doing more, because we are falling for the trap of being hurry all the time. Instead of just slowing down and reprioritize. Okay, what do you want to accomplish? What goals do I want to fulfill or accomplish or get done this 2025 coming up?
Yeah, you're exactly right. When you start to look at some of the statistics that are out there, just the level of burnout that's happening, the level of mental health, I mean, it's a real item inside of it. So just taking that necessarily time to say, you know, a question oftentimes I'll ask individuals is what you're doing today, how sustainable is it? And if you find yourself that it's not sustainable, that's really just an indicator. It's just a dashboard inside of our own life to say, okay, there's something inside of me that I need to make a change and a pivot. And I think we can take the items from today to say, okay, how can we actually grow? Where is some wisdom that I can? And if I don't know, that's okay too. I think part of it could be just seeking some wise counsel. And that's where it's like asking some good questions. How do you actually lead yourself when these situations that are happening? I mean, there's so much there to unpack from what this one verse is saying to us.
Yeah, and finding the right people to inspire and motivate you through 2025, or bringing the right help along the path to be able to inspire you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. In growing in wisdom for years, I should say probably 10, 15, 20 years, I grew up listening to and reading a lot of books about John Maxwell. And he's been one of my mentors, and I didn't meet the guy until 2 years ago. But reading his books helped me and encouraged me to just grow in wisdom. So sometimes we have to think outside the box. It's not just necessarily who is next to me, but what opportunities are presented to me that I can embrace to be able to fulfill or accomplish the goal that I want to accomplish.
Yeah, I think the key, and I know we need to wrap this up, is there's choices, isn't there? I think sometimes we can find ourselves in a place and we forget that there's choices because we feel maybe this hopelessness or this helplessness out there. But there's choices in which we can do every day in which to become really better and stronger in these areas. Absolutely.
So I would like all of us to start thinking in 2025, what area is God speaking to each one of us that we need to just go a little deeper or just make some resolution, but don't make a resolution just for the fun of making a resolution. Be intentional and pursue what God wants for each one of us to do. Because if God wants us to accomplish something, He will empower us. But also, we have to put the energy into it. It's not just, it's going to happen. Something else I'm just thinking, and we are going to close quick here, but timing, it's important also. Because from when you call it and you own it, respond and execute, if you let too much time go by, it's going to not be so successful. Like if you made a goal for 2025, don't wait for December 2025 to attack it.
Yeah, I think God speaks into, there's definitely a timing there where God maybe convicts us or He brings items to the surface. And there's an opportunity there to learn, but the sooner we can take that into a space of, okay, how can I apply some action to that? And that's where, you know, having that core process, it's easy to it's kind of sticky that way. It's easy to retain that, to say, okay, and then remind yourself of like, okay, here's what it is. So it may just be putting a Post-it note on your steering wheel or just beside your computer itself, but just reminders along the way to say, okay, here's the one thing that I'm committed to actually doing itself. And it's the level of not just intentionality, but the level of consistency. And over the course of time, things begin to change and you become better itself. Yeah.
A small change, a small degree change in our lives can be so successful over the months and years that we don't pay attention. Yeah. We want to change the world in the next 5 minutes, but when actually we should try to change the direction in the next 5 minutes. And if we just change 1 degree, then we'll end up to the final destination that we want to get, although it might take a little longer.
Yeah, and I think there's a level of giving ourselves grace in knowing that it's really just a lifestyle of that we are intentionally choosing each day to become better.
So to close this podcast, I would like all of us to start thinking. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and favor with man. If Jesus pursued those and he was the Son of God, if Jesus grew in those, how much more we should be intentional in growing in those areas. So I would like all of us to start thinking, before the end of the year, before January 1st comes around, what area do we want to improve? What area do we see that God is calling us to take? Might be relational with our family, might be health with our bodies, might be spiritual with reading the Bible, fasting, praying, going to church, might be with relational with others, being involved in small groups or serving others or doing things for others. Let's be intentional and not just make a quick decision, oh, this is a resolution. Let's think about it, let's process it, let's go through that core process of call it, own it, respond to it, and then execute it. Because I think if we'll slow down, develop a plan, and then pursue it, God is going to empower us to fulfill what he called us to fulfill.
Yeah.